Okay, today I'm with Deepa Kiran, and she's a professional storyteller. Deepa, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Thanks, Heroy. I'm so glad to be here. I narrate stories orally on the stage, like a performance. That's what I do. I tell stories, and I'm also in the field of education. I
Mhm.
train teachers on how they could use story arts based learning.
Okay, so how does your typical day look like? I mean, what do you do? You're a professional storyteller. That's not something that I hear every day.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I'm always asked, what is it that you earn a living from?
You're not the
What
only
is
one
this?
that's asked that question. Me as a singing coach, sometimes people say you're only singing. Like, what do you do for life? Yeah, if it's only
Right,
if it's
right.
that simple.
Yes, you understand what it is. Yeah. So for me, it was a coming together of many of my interests in life. I think they all just met at this point. Sometime in 2008 is when it officially happened,
Okay.
bringing many of my interests. Yeah, in music and dance and literature, writing, everything, teaching. Yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of those all of those things go well together. I mean, even if you're not a storyteller, I mean, all of those are kind of arts, even conversation, but storytelling and just music especially. I think music is a great medium for storytelling. I think you would agree. And you also use music in your teachings, right?
Yes, I do use musical instruments in my storytelling. I trained in the violin for a few years,
Mm,
but
cool.
otherwise I basically just use simple folk musical instruments
Hmm.
that sort of soundscaping. They enrich the performance because there are so many things that are similar about music and storytelling, as you rightly pointed out. So one weaves into the other, and I enjoy it. So my audience also seems to enjoy it. So yes, I do both together.
Do you use usually percussive instruments or melodic instruments or whatever you get your hands on?
Yeah, it could vary. So it could be a damaru, which is, yes, it is a percussion instrument with a rope. It's what Shivji uses. It could be this. It could be a wind instrument.
What's that instrument called?
This is called a vote. I picked it up when I was in Thailand.
Cool.
Um,
I
High
don't I,
notes on it.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Yeah.
Wow, sounds
It's
cool.
it's a kind of a wind flute.
Cool, cool. Amazing. So I think
Yeah.
in my experience, when I'm teaching, children in groups, let's say, I think they respond to percussive instruments the most. I mean, children are just so used to moving around and dancing, and I think that just kind of
Rhythm.
helps them
Right.
relax and just helps them get involved. Is that your opinion as well, or?
Rhythm instruments, yeah, when there is a beat, it
Mhm.
definitely works for the children to sort of get into they get the flow of the current situation in storytelling, right? I would just add it for that. So yeah, I have seen them respond to instruments like this, which is percussion, but it's also
Mhm.
makes a different kind of music. So as you said, I think for me I have to use both because or all kinds, even the stringed ones. I would bring in. Uh, yes, that's been my experience. Or just the notes. Sometimes using just the notes for them, and
Mhm.
very little. Children, I would volunteer my children's play school, and they would love when you just sing the notes with actions for them. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, since we're talking about this, I know that we're going to get into storytelling a bit later in this, conversation, in this, let's say, interview. But this is more of a casual conversation, I would say. But one thing happened to me when I was, there was this kind of, let's say, um, I'm not sure how to call, but there was a gathering at my university, and a couple of us that were students at the time had to teach something. The children that were kind of preschool, I think, like in preschool, and they wanted us to show them our abilities. For example, I was studying singing at that time, so I had to sing a couple of songs. The other ones were playing the piano, somebody was playing the violin, and the thing with children is that I had to sing an opera piece because I'm classically trained singer, and opera and kids, I'm not sure how that goes together. I mean, even for adults, opera is sometimes a bit hard to digest and everything. So I picked a fairly simple, opera piece. It's actually from Mozart's first opera. Mozart wrote this opera, I think, when he was just 8 years old. So, he was very young when he wrote this piece. And it's a piece about a magician who's actually singing a made up words, made up words that basically mean like abracadabra, if you would translate it. So it goes like Digi Dagi Shuri Muri. Horum, harum, lirum, larum. So it's just made up words. And the children just love that, when I sing Diki, Daki, Shuri, Muri, they were, oh, that's so crazy. Especially when I told them what the piece was about, when it happened in the opera, because that magician or that kind of wizard is actually there to make these two people fall in love, like a girl and a boy. And he kind of makes the secret potion. If they drink it, they're going to fall in love, something like that. I don't want to bother you with details. But when they heard those words, they were just, they loved it so much. And they actually made me sing it all over again. So I think children really, really enjoy, storytelling. And I think that's the best way to even teach them something, but just to get connected with them. The question that I wanted to ask you, uh, do you usually teach like children, or do you teach, people from, like, what's the age range or?
I did begin by working with children
Mhm.
because in 2000, when I finished my master's, I knew the one thing I didn't want to do is teach. And of course, the first job I got was so I started teaching for contractual appointments, where you're filling in for another teacher for 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how I began. And I ended up teaching different age groups. I've taught grade 11th and 12th, which is, just after high school.
Mhm.
I've taught pre-primary, play school. I've taught at the university. I was teaching literature and literary analysis for undergraduates. And I've taught teachers, professors, assistant lecturers on how they could use storytelling. So while the whole spectrum has been happening for a while, my work with children has come down a little in the last few years.
Mhm.
It's 30%. But the rest of the time, I'm working with teachers, Rivero, teachers of different classes, of different grades,
Mhm.
on how they could use storytelling. As an audience, I've told to the widest audience. I've told engineers, I've told, I recently had a session for the judges of the district court.
Whoa.
Yes, I've had lots of fun, wide range of audience.
Okay,
Yes.
so it seems that you really, I think that you can really tell the stories to anybody. It's not like, um, let me ask you this. Do you tell, let's say, kids stories to adults anytime?
Um, so for
Uh,
me, because I do tell a lot of folk tales, and
mhm.
you know how folk tales are. I mean, they are the folk. They are the stories of the people for the people. So I found that folk tales work across age groups,
Yeah.
across backgrounds. Yeah,
Universal.
because it's like music. Folk tales are universal. So I might tell folk tales, to grown-ups and to children. Having said that, yeah, there are certain kind of stories. Let's say, animal stories with repetition, which
Mhm.
I would only for the little ones, and perhaps philosophical stories, reflective, a little more serious. I would reserve for older people. So
Yeah, that
that,
makes sense. That makes sense.
yeah.
Okay, so the way that we kind of got into contact is that you wrote me an email about my Enjoy Enjaami video, or Enjoy Enjaami. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, it is the English word itself. So yes, they might say it as enjoy, but I think it's fine either which ways.
Anyway, I've actually, found that song. It's, as you already said, it's kind of viral, and I like, I like checking out songs from different areas. For example, I've never done a song in Tamil language before, and I think that's very interesting, to kind of to learn something new. But the thing that I made a mistake during my first video is that I forgot to turn the captions on until, I don't know, maybe 2/3 into the video, and I just turned them on laterwards. I mean, I kind of got the general idea about the song from the video and from everything. You can understand something by from the, let's say, hands gestures and like body language. But then I did a second reaction where I actually turned the captions on, and I kind of redone it. And I think that it has a really interesting story, and with it has a great message, about the ancestors, about the world. But since I'm not a Tamil speaking person, I would like to learn more about it. I mean, you did a blog post about it. Can you tell us more about that?
Right. So, yes, I wrote to you because I was seeing some reaction videos and I really liked the effort you had made to rework on your video. And that's what I wrote about, saying that I appreciate that, which is true. There's a lot of information out there now about the song and we can
Mm-hmm.
access that. So it's a song, the word Tamil is written as Tamil, but the word in Tamil is Tamil. Okay, it's said with a r sound.
Uh-huh. That's
Again, a
that's
sound
too
which
hard
is
for me. Yeah.
yeah, and it's quite unique to Tamil and another language in India called Malayalam. So Malayalam and Tamil, they both use r in their speech. So yes, this song Enjoy Enjaami, like for many of us, right? It's a song about the earth. It's a song about humanity itself. It's a
Mm-hmm.
song about celebration. It's a song about wake up reminders. So literally, it's a wake up call. It's a wake up call. It's shaking you at one level and saying, you know what, this has been messed up. You know what, this is going wrong. Let's set things right. So I
Mm-hmm.
like the tone of that. I think that's what resonates with all of us. Like a Pete Seeger song, where have all the flowers gone, or what have you learned in school today. This song is pointing out what's wrong, but at the same time it doesn't drop there. It talks about, all right, let's come together. So in that sense, as Arivu, the lyricist,
Yeah, yeah.
and as Arivu himself has said, he is paying this as a tribute to his grandmother, and he tells us how his grandmother actually is third or fourth generation worker from the plantation. Plantations not even in India. They were taken away to another land, and all they learned to do is just pluck leaves, and then they were brought back to their land. So it's a song about the sorrow of that whole tragedy,
Mm-hmm.
as much as reminders of, what have we inherited from the earth and what are we giving back to it? Where have we forgotten?
So,
This,
excuse me. Uh, so it has something to do with slavery, or did I?
yes, it does. It does. In fact, Enjami is one of the ways of saying my lord.
Mm-hmm.
Enjami.
Okay, okay.
Many references here. Enjami, one of the meanings is my lord. Yeah. So it's a way of, as I saw one of the interviews, Arivu himself saying that I'm not here to comfort you, I'm here to disturb you.
Yeah.
So it's a reminder of that. On the other hand, Enjami or Ensami is also an endearment. It's a way somebody would call their child. Yeah. So they would
That's what I've heard. So
Ensami.
it
Yeah.
shouldn't mean like a granddaughter, grandson, or something like that.
Not exactly, but
Uh-huh.
like let's say you would call the child,
Mm-hmm.
my princess, the way
Ah,
it would.
you like dear, dear, something like that. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So similarly, it's a term of endearment. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it literally means that, but you use it also for calling your child.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like baby. You're not just gonna call a baby, baby.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
In
Cool.
fact, there are many references to that in the same song, So even the Odia, Odia,
Mm-hmm.
what so that is also an endearment. Very often elderly people in the house, they will call out to the child saying, Odia, 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 which is
Oh,
like,
nice, nice.
come running to mama, come running. So they've used that. They've used a lot of child play and the bond of children, the memories of childhood. The
Mm-hmm.
start, in fact, you know, the cuckoo, cuckoo,
Yeah.
ta 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 kalavetti. So it's like games that you would play as children, you know, where you go,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
right?
I'm not sure how to call that game, but I know the game. Like
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And sometimes you play rhymes and riddles in that. You know, you would have a riddle like
Mm-hmm.
um, I I carry my children round my neck. Who am I? Coconut tree. You know, so
Yeah. Wow, how that sounds weird when you are hearing it from somebody else. For example, when we do that something like that here, we don't use rhymes that much, or at least we don't say anything that makes sense. We just make up words like, I think we say ententini savarakatini, which means absolutely nothing, but it
nothing.
rhymes. But it rhymes, so it's
Right.
so so it's some kind of like I don't know, like just like a way of counting, something like that.
Yeah, nonsense verse.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, cool.
Gibberish.
Gibber,
Yes,
gibberish. Yeah.
that's there too. That's there too in this song at some points. But these are the points like ta 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 kalavetti, pondalayarum mean kotti. It could be one of those.
Mm-hmm.
He's picked up from that, inspired by
The
the
games and
elements of game and the spirit of fun and community and togetherness, which has been played around with at so many levels in the song. In
mm-hmm.
fact, even the ululation, where you have the
Yeah, yeah.
you know, it is of course there in Africa, but it's again, it's very much part of the culture
Of course, of course.
in East India. There are specific words, and like it's part of rituals. In Bengal, in East India, it's used for marriages, or in some places, it's used
Marriages.
in yeah, yeah. So it's very interesting how I think I was just so excited that how all of these elements have been married with something far more contemporary, and those have been brought together,
Exactly.
right?
So the thing that I've noticed about the song, and as you already mentioned, is kind of that mixture between, let's say, the traditional and the modern, especially in music. You can hear a lot of that in singing. You already said like you have a lot of references to games and like what elderly people would say in families, but a lot of it even has like the singing is very native, I would say, and but the mixing, the production of the song is very modern. So, for example, I would never think of having, let's say, a bass guitar in that kind of song. For example, the bass guitar, let's say electric bass, kind of sounds too modern for me. But with all the drums, with all the percussive instruments, with all the singing there, it somehow just fit perfectly. And I really enjoy how many small details were put into just a 3-minute song. And you already talked about it. I mean, there are too many details, and this is like I'm revisiting this song every now and then, and I always find something new. I didn't know about those kind of games, like those callings that you said, like when your parents
Yeah.
are calling you. That's really interesting. But I think I did notice, like when somebody is calling you, like Enjami, like they're saying dear. For example, I think that they were impersonating a grandmother in the song. Like they changed their
Yes.
voice. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm. So what else?
Um,
What else is interesting?
I just wanted to mention about the mixing. The person
Hmm.
who's done audio mixing, he's an award-winning artist himself. So no
Okay.
wonder, they were really. I saw one of the interviews where they were really glad that he was part of this project. They because he
No, no,
brought
it,
in
it it sounds so good. It
all that
sounds
you're
like
mentioning.
world class.
There has been much spoken about the Wapari as well, which is again a lament tradition, a powerful oral tradition which is there across the villages of Tamil Nadu, and there are different versions of those traditions in rest of the country. But coming back to Wapari, Wapari is there are people who are specifically the Wapari singers, right?
Okay.
And the lament or the mourn is of course one for deaths, for funerals where they are called to sing, but also lament and mourning for larger socio-political concerns
Hmm.
and bringing, so it is resistance poetry, and which has been around for really, really, really long, where they are talking about the earth, talking about issues in
Yeah,
the
like
society,
in
all
environmental
of it.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
but
and
political as well.
socio-political. Yes, yes. So there's a powerful thread of that, which is just reflecting the realities. And wherever you mentioned, that Arivu is the one who sung in the old woman's voice himself. Yes. So those parts, which probably I've seen in the comments, where people mention that it just made me cry. So there is Wapari tradition itself is meant to bring that tearing, is meant to help a person experience their grief deeply enough, experience collective grief or individual grief in the capacity that they can, because
Hmm.
there is catharsis, right, in that, and there is thought provoking in that. So it's very interesting how he has used that tradition,
Hmm.
and sometimes he has picked up the direct words that he learned from his grandmother in Wapari, and sometimes he has created his own. Both of it are powerfully brought in. Yeah, yeah,
So
here.
it's amazing that you say that the song is basically meant to awaken people. No, is that correct?
I'm saying that that is very much a thread, as I observed, right? So, I mean, um, these are all interpretations of literature,
Of
right? So,
course, of course. Yeah.
I cannot make a final claim, but to me, it does definitely speak volumes about this aspect, and particularly after seeing all the various interviews and their talks, all the more that this is definitely a rich agenda as part of
Hmm.
it.
Hmm. So it's interesting because for somebody as a foreigner, as myself, it's hard to pick up on every single thing, just by listening to it. I mean, even when I'm watching with the captions on, I don't think every single word is, correctly translated. And I mean, probably better than me there. But the message, I think the video speaks a lot as well, because if the video is very colorful and it's very well done, as well as the mixing, I think it goes so well together. And you say that it's kind of like it's meant to make people aware, even maybe shock them a bit, right? So they can maybe change something tomorrow. So that's like too many things in one song, but that's what makes it so good. That I think
Yeah.
that's why I'm so glad that it went this well, that it's viral. Because if it wasn't
Yes.
viral, then it would kind of be just, I don't know, it would be sad.
Yes, and I think all of them made it because they wanted to make it full stop. They didn't stop to think that it would go viral or any
Yeah,
of this
of
would happen.
course, of course.
The process itself was the satisfaction to start with. So when you were talking about the video production, right?
Hmm.
So apparently there were sequences actually shot in Arivu's village, and the people who appear on the screen are the people from his village. Um,
Like that grandpa that was smiling.
that's his grandmother, yes.
Well, I was talking about the
Yes.
grandpa. There was a grandpa that really had a beautiful smile at one point.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
All
cool.
people from his village, all of them are from Arivu's village. Apparently, that was also the idea. It's their story. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Why make
and
why find the actors?
yeah, and also it again, builds a spirit of resilience rather than this is just, oh, it's all wrong, it's all messed up. I mean, these are people who are smiling,
Hmm.
right? Their stories may be sad, but there's the spirit of resilience in that. I thought that was beautiful. And yes, as we see so many, metaphors and analogies of
Hmm.
the now, the now meeting them. They're the little girl smiling. There's of course Dhee, who is reaching out and to the soil, or who's reaching
Yeah,
out
yeah, yeah.
old man with a walking stick. So there's constant interaction. Vango vango unnagi. So which is like come together.
Hmm. Hmm.
Different levels, or as you see yourself as different.
Yeah, and
And
they say ride the elephants and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. So come together in the spirit of celebration, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Said about that there are other things being shown to us. It's always interesting. It shakes us a bit when we think on any issue in life. That oh, this is a story and this is how it is, and then we are introduced that no, there is another story also, and another and another and
Hmm.
another. The point is not whether my story is true and yours is false, mine is right and yours is wrong. The point is that there are multiple stories and there will always be multiple stories.
Mhm.
Let's just come together with that awareness. I thought that's what the song, stood out for me.
Mhm.
And perhaps in spirit, we all experienced that. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds, that sounds amazing. And I think even if there are, like millions of stories, I think you should listen to all of them and then make up your own, from that stories. If you just go like, straight ahead, straightforward with just one kind of, let's say, idea, you're not going to, let's say, you're not going to grow as a person, at least that, and you're probably going to just be stubborn. You're not going to listen to anybody. You have to let people in. And I think that's kind of this what this song is about as well. And when you said that it's kind of a blend of like modern, or let's say younger generations and older, I think they pictured that very good with the last photo of the video where they were all
Yeah.
sitting down. And somebody wrote in the comments, another thing that's interesting is that the younger generations are sitting, I think, while the older ones are
Yes.
kind of standing, and that kind of represents like respect, if I understood that correctly.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's enough about that song. Thank you for really helping me understand a bit more. That just makes the song even better. But another question that I have is, how important do you think, in general, the lyrics of the songs are? I mean, not just this song.
Ah, uh, they matter a lot. No wonder I studied literature and I taught literature. So if you're asking me,
Yeah, yeah, that's why I'm asking you.
I I would I use songs to teach poetry in the classroom. I rarely use just the poems.
Hmm.
um, yes, they are certainly deeply significant, and like we were discussing the similarities between storytelling and music.
Hmm.
Um, Research talks about this born imagery, where music creates images in your mind, and that's what stories do. They create images. There's, of course, the fact that, in stories, there is this contradictory excitement of desire for surprise and the pleasure of prediction.
Hmm.
And music also offers that, because the moment you start listening to something, you are now wondering. Neuroscience, this is not me, neuroscience tells us that the moment you listen to music, the mind is thinking, okay, what might be the next chord, what might be the next melody,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
If we are thinking of both together, then there's double excitement. So not only the music, but even the lyrics are equally taking the listener along on that
Hmm.
journey. It's going to be that much more powerful. So for me, the lyrics are really, really significant when it comes to music. Yeah.
One person said in my life that, let's say, poetry, just like poetry today, is not that, maybe it's not that famous, or it maybe doesn't even exist like poetry itself. That the only poets now that exist are the ones that are writing songs, like music. What do you think about that? I don't know if you understood me, but is
I
there,
did. I
yeah,
did. I
what
did.
do you think about that?
Um, Right. So again, these are opinions, right? We all
Of
with
course, yeah.
different worldviews. Um, if I have to talk of poetry, I have a lot of young friends who are in their 20s, and I know who are heavily into both writing and reciting poetry. They are part of poetry clubs,
Mm-hmm.
spoken poetry, which some people do not count as poetry, but spoken word poetry has picked up heavily. It's quite popular, and you have
What would be the
a
difference
lot of.
between spoken word and usual poetry?
Okay.
Is that too abroad?
No, I'm not sure I have the right answers, but
Ah.
spoken word poetry does involve, as far as I know, it is the performance of your poetry also. You perform your poetry on the days, and there is leeway to move between a little bit between prose and poetry, as
Uh-huh.
I understand.
Okay, okay. So improvised a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, yeah. So that would be my loose definition of spoken word poetry. So I do think it's there, but in different in a completely different form,
Okay.
uh, or not completely. Yeah, in it has morphed a little. It has changed its forms, and which always happens with almost everything, right?
Mm.
Language has changed its form today.
Of
Dressing
course.
has. Fashion has changed. Yeah.
So we were talking about, and please correct me. You said it's not called Tamil, but Tamir language.
R, r,
Okay, so Tamir language. I mean,
r.
R.
It is tough. It will take a while. It's a good try. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that language also changed. You know, it's not the same. I mean, even in Enjoy Enjaami, I think it's not quite the same as it was like years ago, like decades and centuries ago.
Yes. Having said that, Tamil language has kept alive a lot of its literature, which comes from a very long time ago, like the Tirukkural and even texts that go beyond.
Hmm.
So it is not without reason that UNESCO has declared it as one among the 10 classical languages, which are among the oldest yet living languages.
Hmm. That haven't died out. Yeah.
Yeah, that haven't died out, and that are still alive, and that have a rich genre of literature available
Hmm. Hmm.
there, which has been there since long. So, in that sense, a lot of that literature is still there, right? So, there's one, and of course, the functional spoken Tamil has undergone its change like any other language. So, the answer would be yes and no. Both have happened. They have kept alive
Hmm.
the text as they
Tamar.
are also.
Tamar language. Tamar. I'm still trying.
Tamil, yes.
Tamar. Okay. So, what do you think that makes a song authentic? In your, experience, do people enjoy, let's say, real life stories, or do they enjoy fictional stories more? Or, what makes the song authentic? What makes it, I don't know, stick out? What makes it really unique? What makes it so important to people?
Um,
Man, I ask some tough questions, right? These are all
no, it's
philosophical.
uh, I'm just thinking, since I'm not a songwriter, whether I'm qualified to
It doesn't
I
have,
can
no, no, no.
answer from
I'm not
as a
saying,
listener.
okay, not doesn't it doesn't have to be in songs. I mean stories, the thing that you
Yeah,
talk about.
right. So I could answer yes from that space. As a storyteller, I could respond to that. I tell stories which are fictional. I tell
Hmm.
real life stories of others, and sometimes I also share personal stories from my
Hmm.
life. I think each of them is powerful in very different ways because the fictional stories at times, or most of the times, fictional stories are also metaphors and analogies for things that happen in our
In real
life.
life, yeah.
Resonate. They certainly resonate with us. In fact, it might be interesting because we also suspend our disbelief and we travel with the story. Sort of our guards are down when we are listening to a fictional story,
Hmm.
and we can vicariously experience. We can step back from that character and yet uh, feel all the emotions of the character. Like, for example, when we're watching a ghost movie, right? You know that all of that is not happening, but that's why you enjoy it. If it's going to
Yeah.
really
Then you probably
enjoy it.
wouldn't be there. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a nice how to say, um comparison.
Yeah.
So you think that sometimes, the, so this is a question that I'm kind of connecting with the last one. Is it, let me just think how to phrase this. So if you're telling me a story that's maybe fictional, it's maybe easier for me to listen to it than if I think it's directly connected to me. Let me try to ask this again. If I know the story is maybe connected to me, even though I can connect with the story in a way, but I don't know it yet, maybe I would have a harder time, maybe letting it in. For example, if I know that the story might be concerning me, then I could be a bit skeptical and a bit afraid to
Yeah.
let it in. But if I imagine it's about somebody else, then I connect. Oh, but that's actually kind of me. That could be good. Yeah, I'm all over the place, but I hope that you
Yeah,
understood.
yeah, yeah. Right. I hear you. I understand
Yeah,
what you are saying, which is a very high possibility, right? Which is why songwriters and storytellers use fiction. That's also one reason for using fiction, where if you're going to say the same thing, this is what I want to say, then maybe half the people would not feel like or would not be interested in listening to it. Um,
exactly. Yeah. I think that's the reason why, let's say, superhero movies are more and more popular these days, you know? Did you think about that? For example, Marvel, DC. I mean, those are all kind of gods and superhuman beings. I mean, you can connect with some of those things, on a personal level and stuff like that. But nobody thinks of themselves as a god. I hope they don't. When you're watching Thor or somebody.
the superhero stories, and I think what I see of the millennials or the Gen Z or the different names that we are giving them, they are also very prepared to hear more truthful narratives, personal narratives, where you're vulnerable, you're opening yourself up. For example, if I use cinema as a reference, while on the one hand we have heroic heroes, we are now more and more prepared for heroes who are bumbling, who are messing up,
That's true.
um,
That's true.
who are, yeah, the that's what I find about the new generation. They're more ready for those stories, even in fiction and even in personal stories. So coming back to your question about the real life stories, I do find that those are also powerful when, let's say, we're taking a historical character, or let's say we're taking someone who has had struggles just like you and I, and they have traversed a certain journey. It can resonate with us, those kind of stories. For example, even myself, I've noticed that I work with teachers a lot, okay? And at least in India, you find 80% or even more of the teachers are women.
Mhm.
So when I'm training them in workshops, I find there's this hesitation to open up, use the body, to just let
Yeah.
go and
Yeah.
laugh and giggle and be silly. And I find different ways to inspire. And I remember it was just 2 years ago. Until then, I hadn't mentioned it, but 2 years ago, I was working with a set of teachers, and somehow they were resisting,
Hmm.
that a space to let go. And I told them, you know what? You have just one lifetime. The worst disease is what will people think. Can you stop thinking about other people? And then I
Exactly.
shared, I said, I'm a single mom, and you know how it is in India. It's not very convenient, and my mother gets all the time worried, and she keeps calling me and telling, Chitti idu sonna, atte idu sonna. She'll give me all the news of all the relatives, what all they have to say about me. And I always tell my mom, Amma, those who don't pay my bills, I don't care what they say.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
remember that day, literally, I could see the energy jump up in the classroom. And after that, I had these 150 teachers who were just raring to go the rest of the
Yeah, they were
workshop.
hungry to learn more.
Yeah, and
Ju-
and then I realized, yeah, sometimes even very small personal narratives can hold a meaning for them, because otherwise they're probably sitting there thinking, which actually one teacher, I got the idea because one teacher told me in the short break that same day, she said, "Ma'am, if I had such a supportive family like yours, I would have also done things like storytelling in my life."
but you see what happened there. You've actually shared a bit of your personal, story that
Yes.
was probably very hard for you to say, and they, finally decided that okay, this woman is, ready to tell her side of the story. I think I'm ready to let her in and, tell me more. Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
I find this all very inspirational. I mean, I'm really glad that we're having this talk. Stories are so powerful. There are a lot of things that I want to say, but I don't think, I think we can go on like forever like this, but I will try to keep it short. One thing that is kind of an interesting thing that maybe you should try in those kind of groups. Have you ever tried this exercise? Like, can you raise your hand the highest that you can? Have you ever tried that? For example, can you
No.
can you raise your hand now as high as you can hand, as high as you
Okay.
can? Can you do that?
Okay.
No, no, no,
Right.
no, higher, higher. And that's the thing,
Okay.
you know, everybody starts like, first they say like hi, but you say no, 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 higher, then everybody stretches a bit more. What means,
Yeah.
it means that everybody is first going to their comfort zone, like everybody is prepared to raise them up like this, but when you say no, no, just a bit more, then everybody is stretching out a bit. So it's
Stretches.
just, you need to just sometimes, evoke people to
Yeah.
just push a little bit beyond that, because everybody is just,
True, true.
like everybody's staying in that comfort zone, and that's kind of killing the future. I don't know. I mean, people, if people are just staying in that comfort zone, there's not many places that you can go. I think that
Yeah.
I think young people are kind of struggling with this, because a lot of them just want to find a job and just keep it for the rest of their life, just have it as steady as they can. And I understand that you need to have some stability, but at the same time, I don't know, you need to evolve, you need to do something more. I think that storytelling can help in that way. So, which leads to my next question: do you like happy stories, or do you also sometimes tell, like sad stories?
Oh, I tell all kinds of stories, and I like all kinds of stories. I used to not like stories where there are, characters who swindle other people, who cheat them, who
Mm-hmm.
probably
Mm-hmm.
murder them. I would never like those kind of stories. And I stayed away from them, in fact, for a long time. And then I think I had this moment of epiphany where I said, oh, but that's life, life has all kinds of people.
Of course, yeah, like all kind of
So,
characters.
yeah, why am I running away from stories that have characters whom I have been taught to call as evil? Those are all just qualities. There are all kinds of qualities and all kinds of people.
Of
So
course.
now I feel more connected to all kinds of stories. Yeah, every story has its space. Sad stories certainly have a space. Yeah, yeah. In fact, now that you're asking, I think it was about 8 months ago, or almost a year ago. Yeah, almost a year ago, I was having a conversation with one of my storyteller friends from Norway. And it was just an informal conversation, and he ended up sharing a Nordic mythology story, a very
Okay.
sad story, but I think that's just what I needed to hear that day, because I've been going through some loss as well, and
Mm-hmm.
this story
Mm-hmm.
seemed to, sort of help me experience that um, in more completeness, because finally that's what it is, right? Every emotion, as they say, when we can experience it in completeness, then there's silence at the end.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I do think that all kinds of stories with all kinds of situations, all kinds of characters, are essential to share and to listen both.
So I saw online that you had a TEDx talk. What was that about, and how you got in contact with them? How does that go?
So I had an invitation from the Amity University. That was the first TEDx talk that I gave in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to of course speak anything related to storytelling. I remember hearing that it's usually you talk about the profession, but they wanted, it was a time when there was a lot of communal strife in the country, and they wanted if my talk could somehow leave some thought for the youth. So that's how role of storytelling in our lives, that
Mm-hmm.
TEDx talk at Amity. And I'm really glad it came back to the same idea that there are different stories and they always will be. And and I tried to share what I wanted to through little stories. So it's a talk about storytelling with stories. Yeah,
Yeah,
like the other two TEDx talks also. It's always little stories and then about storytelling. Yeah.
I think that's the best way to tell a story.
Yes.
I remember listening in your TEDx talk, in one of them, a story about a frogs race, or frogs race. So we don't have to talk about the story, because I think maybe somebody already knows that. If they want, they can watch your TEDx talk. We're going to leave the link in the description. But I just want to tell you how I first heard about that story. So I was in music school. I was in music primary school, and there was this teacher that I absolutely hated. And I don't like her today, even, because she's just an old lady who doesn't know how to speak with kids. And there were a lot of bad things. I mean, I don't know where to start. If she saw, like girls in my class that had their nails painted. She would say something like, tomorrow you're going to sell your body on the streets. And I don't know how she got these, doesn't matter. Anyway, she's not a very, she's kind of more of a witch than a lady. But there was one thing that I've learned from her, and that's that story. She actually told us a story about the frogs, but in this version, there were the crickets. And I remember when she said that one of them was kind of deaf and they couldn't hear what others were saying, and that helped them, just continue. And I think the only thing that I remember from that person, who I don't really like, is that one positive story that I've kind of remembered to my life. And whenever I had a bad time, I was always, I mean, why can't I be that, frog, that cricket? Why should we listen to negative people around ourselves? And that kind of connects with the things that your mother was talking about. Actually, what you said to your mother about about other people from your family. If they're not paying your bills, then they shouldn't worry about you too much. I think that's kind of connected. uh,
Yeah.
so for the end, would you like to tell us a story? Do you have anything that can maybe sum all of this up, or I don't know, just leave us with a smile on our faces, or maybe a tear, but if it's, educational?
Um, okay, I'm thinking, should it be a fun one or a little more serious one?
You can, you know what? Tell us two stories if you want, whatever. I
Okay.
really enjoy this conversation, and I want you to have all the freedom that you have.
Okay. So here's a story which is a popular folk tale from Tamil Nadu. Yeah. Which a lot of them would have already heard, but I love sharing the story. And this is a story about a crow. So once
Okay.
upon a time, there lived a crow, and the crow had a very good friend, a grandmother. The crow would fly down every morning to the grandmother, and the grandmother would be making the hottest, yummiest vadas. Now, vadas are a very, very tasty dish called vadai in Tamil Nadu, called vada in where I live, Andhra Pradesh. It's lentils soaked and ground the next morning with some herbs and spices and then deep fried. Yeah, so that really, really yummy. And of course, the crow couldn't resist the vadas like any of us. And the day it went was the day of Pongal celebration, a very popular festival, harvest festival in Tamil Nadu and many other places in India. Pongalo pongal, pongalo pongal, ulla pola ponga vendu pongalo pongal, hoi pongalo pongal, pongalo pongal, ulla pola ponga vendu pongalo pongal, hoi pongalo pongal. So in celebration of Pongal, the crow got a nice big vada, which the grandmother put right into her mouth. The crow came flying up to the branch of the tree, perched there. She was about to chew into her vada when a fox passing by, jealous as jealous could be, decided to try and get that vada somehow and said, "Oh, crow, I heard so much about your melodious voice. Will you please sing a song for me?" And the crow had never heard anyone say that about her voice ever. She had only heard people say, "Ah, get off." Yo. So she was delighted as hell. And she sang, "Ka, ka, 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 pada." She saw her vada land down in the fox's mouth. It was done, finished. The crow realized her folly too late. Now, cut the scene to sometime later. A little crow was flying down to the grandmother again, took a vada in her mouth. She flew back to the branch of the tree, and our same fox was walking by. Little crow with vada in the mouth. Of course, the fox had to get it. And he looked up and said, "Oh, little crow, I heard you have a melodious voice. Can you sing a song for me?" The crow took out the vada from her beak, put it carefully under her claw, and sang, "Caw, caw, caw, caw." Now the fox realized this is a tough one, But he was not one to give up either, equally tough. So he said, Nice song. I heard you dance also very nicely. Can you please dance for me? She took out the vada from under the claw, put it back in her mouth, and danced takadimi takajunu, takadimi takajunu, takadimi takajunu, very happily. The fox was completely flummoxed. What is happening? When that little crow looked down at the fox and said, Uncle, my mother already told me the story of how you fooled her.
Nice, nice. So I didn't want to stop you. I knew about the story before, but I didn't know the ending. It's kind of different. I knew it. I knew it to the part where the crow actually loses the piece of the food, and
Right.
somebody stops the story there, wanting to say, you don't have. You need to be careful around other people, like around foxes. But this one is even better. I think this one is more. I don't know. It has a better ending. It's a positive ending. So
Yes.
uh, can I actually tell you a story? It's kind of actually from a song that's from my parts of the world.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
It's not really a story, but I think it might be. And I don't know even why I'm saying it, because it's not that interesting, but I think it's kind of cool. Anyway, there's a song about this guy who's following the girl that he's in love with, but that doesn't know that he loves her. He's following her to college. She's going to leave town, and she's going to go on the last train, and he's not going to see her. So that's a song about a band from Balkan, from Sarajevo. And the guy is describing the things. He's helping her carry the briefcase. And the way that he is describing the briefcase, I think, tells a lot about the story. He says that the briefcase is very, very heavy. The heaviest that he has ever, carried. And before she entered the train, and he wanted to say that he loved her, but in the last moment, he said, like, Selma, he said, be careful and don't look out the window. You might get hurt. For example, don't look out the window. He wanted to say he loves her, and that's kind of the story. That's basically the whole song. Even though the song is kind of longer, but I think the whole story would be nonsense if he didn't say that the briefcase was so heavy. Because think about, when you want to do something, you don't think about these stuff. But when you're mourning, when you're sad, every single thing is way more heavier than you think. Even the briefcase, and not just physically, but mentally. And this actually connects with one thing that I wanted to pass by you. You've read maybe the book called Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. Have you read that book?
I've read some of Tolstoy, but not that one.
Yeah, that book starts with a very interesting sentence that I think you're going to love. It starts with something, and I'm paraphrasing this, but all happy families are happy in the same way, but every sad family is, sad in a special way. Meaning, when you're happy, you're going out in the world, you're happy, you're smiling. But when you're sad, there's always something deeper that's, bothering you. And I think sometimes from that grief and from that sadness, the best kind of stories and best kind of art develops, music. And anyway, if you want to end with another story, I think that would be the best, if you want.
Okay. Yeah, sure. This is a story that kept coming back to me, and I thought I should share it. So,
Okay.
okay, let me just take a minute. Okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah. Listen, 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 everybody. Just for you, I have a story. Here is the story of a demon. The demons are called Asuras. So this was the Asura called Apasmara. There once lived this dwarf-like creature, the Asura Apasmara. Now, if you want to know more about him or discover where he is, you can look up any of the images of dancing Shiva as Nataraja. You will find that one foot of Shiva is crushing down Apasmara and the other foot of Shiva is up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the story goes that Apasmara is the demon of ignorance. And he has the power of immortality without conditions. Okay, no conditions apply, no small print. Now, why am I saying that? Because there are other demons who have also had something like immortality when they asked for it as a boon, but not entirely immortality. I'll give you an example. Like the demon Hiranyakashipu, he had a boon that he could not be killed in the morning or at night. He could not be killed inside or outside. He could not be killed on earth or in the sky. He could not be killed by any man or animal. And he could not be killed by any man-made weapon. So, Hiranyakashipu was killed by a creature that was half man and half lion. And the creature came at twilight when it was neither morning nor night. It took him to the threshold of the house, so he was not inside nor outside. The creature placed him on the lap, so he was not on earth nor in the sky. And finally, with all its might and with its claws, that creature tore open Hiranyakashipu. With that, Hiranyakashipu died. So there was one clause, one loophole in the immortality. Not so with Apasmara. Apasmara is one of those very few demons which has complete immortality. Therefore, even Lord Shiva, who is one among the trinities and the god of destruction, of death, even Shiva cannot destroy Apasmara. This is just a very small incident, a very small picture of Apasmara's life, and why it holds deep meaning for me is because Apasmara is the demon of ignorance. So what the Hindu philosophy really says is that ignorance will never die. Ignorance is always going to continue to live in the world, and the only thing we can do is be aware and press it down. And the philosophy explains why Apasmara can never die. The reason apparently is that otherwise there will never be a journey to knowledge. You need to pass through that step of ignorance to make it finally to the space of knowledge.
Wow. Wow. That was an amazing story. I didn't think it would go in that direction the way it started, but yeah, it's amazing. Let me just say one thing that continues to that. Einstein actually says that he thinks only two things in life are infinite: space and human ignorance. But he thinks that he's not completely sure about the space. So thank you, Deepa. This was an amazing conversation. I really had
Thank you
fun.
so
Thank you for your
much.
time. I wish you all the best. I'm going to leave links for everything that you want in the description. Please, people, check her out. I think she's an amazing storyteller. You had the opportunity to see it for yourself, to listen to the stories. I hope this is not the last time that we talk. Keep in touch, and good luck with everything that you're doing in your life. You're doing a great job.
Thank you so much, and it's lovely to meet musicians, educators in the music field who are having such a beautiful perspective and spreading love and shine to the world. Wish you best.
Likewise. See you next time. Bye.
See you. Bye bye.